Okay, so India's National River Linking Project is pretty much the most ambitious of its kind. It would connect several of the subcontinent's rivers into a mega water grid spanning the entire country. And I learned from your piece that this project is 100 years in the making. How did it all begin?
Yeah, so at least one version of it is 100 years old. So
Mm,
in the 19th century, there was this British engineer who was an irrigation expert, and he wanted to connect some of the rivers in southern India to better irrigate the area, but also to facilitate better transport of goods.
yeah.
But the river linking never happened.
Mm.
But then in the 1960s and 70s, there were a few iterations of the idea, but those ideas also kind of fizzled out. And then in the 1980s is when this current incarnation of the river linking project was born, but still nothing happened. Then in 2014, when Narendra Modi became the prime minister, his water minister at the time, very famously said that this is going to be done in a decade. Obviously, that was not feasible, of course. A decade has passed by, and the construction of the first link is yet to start. But this present government has really taken up this project now.
Okay. There are also some potential consequences, and your article spells them out very clearly. Let's go through them now. Starting with the first link in the grid, which is to connect the Ken and Betwa rivers in central India. It would
Yes.
take about 6 years. What are some of the immediate known impacts of linking these two rivers on the land, on the people? What would happen?
Yeah, so the immediate impacts would be, this link would pass through the Panna Tiger Reserve in central India, and so it would submerge parts of that reserve. It would also displace people in that area. Then it would also have potential negative impacts on some of the protected species in that area. Vultures, we have a fish-eating crocodile called gharial, which is only found in South Asia. I think it's expected to submerge some 2 million trees.
Wow.
So those trees would die. And, I asked about this to the National Water Development Authority, and they said, we've done detailed environmental impact assessments for all the projects that we are going through. So everything is being done while keeping in mind these impacts on the flora, fauna, the people. But nevertheless, these are concerns that water activists and water experts have told me about.
Yeah. And that's just one link, right?
Yeah, that's just one link.
I mean, the project is proposing 14 links transferring water up north from the Himalayas and another 16 links transferring rivers further south in the peninsular areas.
Yes, that's right. So 30 links in total. And so if you add up all that, it comes out to a lot. Like there
Yeah.
have been some estimates that say that the project could displace 500,000 people.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And that's considered a conservative estimate. So the impacts are going to be huge on the people, on the marine life, on the animals, on the trees.
Mm. Yeah. So besides the issue of displacement of people, of destruction of habitat and wildlife, there is another big potential consequence, and that is the potential to change India's weather, because moving river water would affect the water cycle. What is the concern?
Yeah, so the concern is that this project would actually make droughts worse in some parts
Hmm.
instead of helping those drought prone regions. So, a quarter of the rain that India receives is from recycled precipitation. That is when water evaporates from land and goes into the atmosphere and then falls as rain somewhere else. And what scientists are concerned is that diverting such a large amount of water could interfere with that natural process.
Mm.
And it could lead to changes in rainfall patterns. And so I spoke to scientists who did a modeling study on this. And they predict if this project goes through, it could reduce rainfall in some dry regions by up to 12%.
Oh.
It would also increase rainfall in some other places. But the concerning thing is that it could make some of those dry regions drier.
And the paper that you're mentioning was looking specifically at rainfall patterns during the monsoon season, right? Which is this period of intense rainfall in India. I remember when I lived there after college, just like it coming down torrentially in like short periods of time. It was like a lot of rain all at once.
Yeah,
but
it's
you're
going
saying,
on right now.
Oh, you're in it right now.
Yeah.
You quote the lead author Tejasvi Chauhan as saying, the initial assumption is that river basins are independent systems and output from one can be used to feed the other, but they exist as part of a hydrological system. Changes in one can lead to changes in another.
Yeah.
And that just seems like the big takeaway of this research challenging the river linking project, which is that river basins are connected already through the water cycle, through the atmosphere. And if you were to mess with the connections on the ground, it would change the atmosphere too, in ways that just we don't fully know.
That's exactly right. He said it's not like they're not independent systems. They're all part of this one big hydrological system. And if you tinker with that, it could lead to unintended changes, which could really exacerbate the problem rather than help the problem.
Yeah. Sushmita, you mentioned earlier that the hydrological data behind the plan is not being shared openly, at least with scientists and water management experts. And that's obviously a problem. So to give climate modelers more confidence in the project, what do you think needs to change?
One thing I think that would give independent researchers and experts more confidence is if the government would look into this new research about how the project would affect the rainfall patterns. When I spoke to Tejasvi Chauhan, the author of the study, I asked him, after you've published the study, has anyone from the Indian government reached out to you for, collaborating and seeing how this project would affect rainfall patterns? And at least at that time, he said no one had reached out.
You mentioned in your piece that there's other ways to manage water. Why do you think the government has ultimately landed on moving the rivers themselves versus other means for doing water redistribution work?
Right. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm speculating here, but I think a river linking project sounds very fancy. It sounds like, oh my God, that is going to be really impressive if we were able to do it. Whereas the other things, rainwater harvesting or recharging groundwater or crop diversification, they are like simple things that can be done locally.
Yeah.
I don't know that the government is doing the river linking project just for the optics of it. But I think that is one part. It is an impressive project on paper. It would be an engineering marvel.
Sushmita Pathak is a freelance journalist based in Delhi, India. You can read her full piece, The Audacious Scheme to Reroute India's Water, at the link in our episode notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me about this.
Thanks for having me on.